We have a lot to cover in this week's episode of Onboard Lifestyle, so let's just get right back into it and join the captain as he continues the mast step refit.
You feel like summer days to me, warm, tender, sunny rays. I hope that we are meant to be. You say nothing at all when we meet, yet somehow I know your history. Oh, come what may, I'm ready. Picture frames, lavender paint.
Well, it's the next morning. I'm just mapping out my project for today. I feel good about the epoxy pour, even though it was right in the middle of a rain squall. Everything was covered up in time. I checked on it, everything's curing nicely. I just wanted to check it, make sure there's no water in there. Hey, that looks good. We'll have to pull the tape on the inside, see how everything fared, but it's time to keep pushing. Rain's obviously gonna hit us at any given time. It hit us a couple of times overnight again. But just a couple hours here and there, I gotta get these projects done. Today's project is making this pass-through in that mast base. With this old pass-through filled in, the VH or the AIS antenna lead filled in, it's time to get onto this. My thinking is, rather than having an offset like this was such an awkward angle to get all the wiring through, because it actually extended up about 3 inches. There was a pinch point here, hard to get the wires through. I'm going to put a larger pass-through right dead center, or as close to center as possible. So as the wires in the mast come through this conduit, they're going to have to be forced to loop up and then into the main pass-through. So as water comes in, it's going to shut off here. And this shouldn't have any pinch points. The hardest part will be to getting it around this. I don't want a sharp edge here. So I'm going to build this up with glass and do a nice round over. So as we're pulling wires, if we have to pull future wires, they won't chafe. Okay, the old pass-through was just PVC tubing. And it wasn't scuffed up at all. This is a much larger piece. But by scuffing it would have helped seal it in there. It was just smooth as can be, so that's why it had failed over time and water was intruding around the perimeter of it. But I'm going to kind of get away from PVC on this one because I have this old piece of carbon tube. Found this remnant, well, I hate to say, somebody was throwing it away and I just said, you know what, I will have a purpose for this sometime, somewhere, and sure enough, here I am. This had to be 8 years sitting in a locker, but now I'm going to utilize it. It's the perfect diameter, it's lightweight, it's going to be strong. I'll be able to epoxy this in, and I think this is going to work perfect. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut the tube to 8 inches. I'm going to build up 4 inches to a total of 2.5 inches. The tube is only 2 inches right now. I'm going to build it up to 2.5 inches. And why I'm going to do that is, look at this. I'll be able to put a nice radius on this, on the top edge here, so as cables come over, it's not going to chafe on these sharp points. That's the only reason I want it. And plus, as I slip it through, it gives me a nice heel to rest on the hole. So let's start that. Pretty easy. Just take my tube, mark this out, and start cutting. I put the tape on here. Helps me stay square as I come across this. Looks good. Okay, here is the 8-inch tube. To build this up, I'm cutting another 4-inch piece off. But I'm going to split this one. Draw a line. I'll be able to split that, pull it apart, and epoxy that on. I'll do that twice to get my buildup. Okay, with all my components, let's try to separate one of these, see how hard it is. It's pretty rigid, it's shocked. Okay, I'm gonna put a spacer in here to help me sleeve it over. There we go. Okay, now the idea is lather that up, slide this over, and epoxy it on. I'm not worried about this little gap right here. I'll fill that in with thickened epoxy after both sleeves are on, but let's get these sleeves on first. This one, I'll have to even separate further. This is not going to take very much epoxy. Just one pump each. I put down a little plastic down here. Just, I don't want these components sticking to the wood. This way, if anything drips down, I'll just peel it off. Just gonna paint each surface. The outside of my main tube and the inside of the other tubes. And let's slip this first one over. Just like that. I learned quickly that I need to expand this a little bit more to get this on, because I didn't know what diameter I would end out at. So let's just widen this by a couple popsicle sticks before I butter it up. Well, I had to fight that a little to get it on there, but figured I better get it started before I buttered up. Kind of helps. The epoxy works as a lubricant to help slide it down. Okay, here we go. And there it is. Of course, now I got to clean up. Almost ready to let this cure for a couple hours. I want to clean off this tape first before it gets epoxied on here. This was just giving me a stopping point. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, I'm going to fill this in right now, because while I'm waiting for this to cure, I might as well be waiting for that to cure. I do have just a touch left of thickened, well, normal epoxy. I guess I need to thicken this up a bit to get it in there. Okay, I want this nice and thick. So we'll add our 406. quickly because it's hot out. I don't want this to fire off, and I don't want to waste the rest of this epoxy. Okay, I could feel the epoxy starting to warm up, so I got to get this down. I need to get this as smooth as possible. 406 is very strong. It's one of the hardest fillers to sand. You can sand it, but it's just difficult. Again, I'm not looking for strength on this. I just had epoxy and filler out, so I'm using what I have. I probably could have just used fairing compound right here. All this does is get rid of that sharp edge. That's all I'm trying to do. It's getting pretty good right there. Clean it up a little bit more. Again, this down here will have a nice radius over it. This will be rounded over. But yeah, it's looking good. Well, while my little project is drying, I'm gonna head to the upper deck and check out the progress of yesterday's little project. Let's take a look at this. Looks like my sticker stayed down. I think I'll just leave that for now. Let's just tackle this one right now. It's dry in here. Everything fired off nicely. I think what I want to do is sand this out, mark my new fitting that we're building. It's going to go not in this circle. It needs to be more centered because I've got conduit here, conduit here. I want it to be exactly in the center, which looks right about in here. We'll drill a pilot hole. Let's see where that comes through. That way I can still adjust it back and forth a little bit. But let's sand this up first so I'm not catching any of these burrs. Make that look pretty, okay? Well, it's getting real smooth now. There's a little low spot there and there, but everything else looks good. When I fill this with thickened epoxy, I'll just touch those at the same time. But besides that, it looks good. Next thing I want to do is lay out my pilot hole I'm going to drill in. I'll find center of the mast and drill center first and see where that comes out. If I'm off a little bit, I could adjust it either direction. But let's get that pilot hole done because I know it looks beautiful this way. But look at this. It's that time of the day when storms start rolling in. Okay, let's lay this out quickly. Boy, the deck is thick there. Okay, that's it. Now let's go inside, see where that came through. First thing I need to do is get the tape out of here from yesterday's project. It's a little too tight to see what I'm doing. I just have to blindly do this. But it's coming. Oh, all that's left is the sticker. There we go. Look at that. Came off clean. And now let's look for my pilot hole. It's kind of a blind, oh no. I could see it now. It's right next to that post. So that means this post is a little thicker than I thought in here. I tried to measure down and calculate it out up here. I tried to center it, which is, I think, right on this bolt here. I need to move it further this way. So if that's right on it, I need to go half of the diameter. Okay, I'll measure that out and reevaluate. Well, it's not the end of the world. That was the perfect spot as far as leading the cabling down. I need to shift it 1 inch, which is half the diameter of that tube. That'll give me plenty of clearance, and it should give me enough for the mast to clear everything. It will. I'll make it work. Okay. Try one more pilot hole. I'm sure this will do. Okay, let's see where this one came through. Well, that's interesting. Look at that. There's another little pilot hole that somebody else had put, and I came right next to it. I bet you that was the original plan, and it was misdrilled into that post. Interesting. Okay, that's where I'm drilling. Gives me plenty of clearance now. That is 1 inch between those two holes. I have a 2-inch hole I'm drilling, so that means that I'll just be missing my post. Okay, I've grabbed a 2 1/8 hole saw. My pipe is 2 inches, but I want it a little bigger. I don't want it to be tight in there. I need room for epoxy. I want to make a nice seal on this. Okay, I'm anticipating a hammer and chisel moment because the deck is going to be thicker than the length of my hole saw. Oh, that's nice. This first piece came out. This looks like it just came out of the factory. I mean, it is just fresh and clean, zero rot. I mean, it just looks perfect, like it's brand new. This was installed 32, 33 years ago. Now I'm on to the next layer. Okay, I've passed all the wood. Look at this. This is all glass now. I gotta be getting close. Wow. That turned out about perfect. I am right next to that support post. I mean, I can't even feel the seam there. It is so perfectly measured out. Wow. I don't know if it's dumb luck or what, but that looks good. That core is bone dry, looks great. If any rot was in our deck, well, our decks are all synthetic. There's just a pad around the mast just for compression. The rest of it is all synthetic, but it makes me happy that none of these bolts had weeped any moisture over the years, because certainly it would have telegraphed through here. Would have wicked right in, but it didn't. That means all is good. Okay, clouds are getting thick. Time to waterproof this for the night. Well, this turned out exactly how I envisioned it. I made it wild on the bottom and a little high on the top. I just made this a little tall because I wanted to laminate these 3 pieces together and then cut it to the right height. I didn't know the deck thickness. It was an unknown to me. Now I know. So I'll be transferring these numbers to this and cutting this flush with the inside deck. Pretty easy to do, actually. All I have to do is take this. You can see it's not square. This is the upper deck. It's been leveled for the mast to sit on, but the lower deck follows the curvature of the cabin top. So for me to flush this tube out, it's pretty simple to transfer this information to this. Okay, I'm going to take my plug and look at this. This is actually that original pilot hole that I drilled through the deck and then moved over 1 inch. I'm going to use that for my reference mark. That's exactly where it's at. And we'll use my seam just to get a starting point. Okay, with my mark, I take that, line it right up on here, just like this. Then I'm going to work my way around and put a reference mark. There's one, and I roll this around. Now, even though this is irregular, this should give me my deck profile. And as I come around, I come right back to the mark. So that's given me the rough outline for my cut. Actually, it's not even rough, that's where I'm gonna cut. It's kind of hard to see against this backdrop, so I'll outline it with tape. Just follow my mark, and that's my cut. That went pretty easy. I'm just going to knock some of these sharp edges off. Then lay out the other side. Wow. I bet you that was 3 times harder to cut. Well, I have all this work into my new piece here, and I haven't even test fit it yet. I've been going strictly off measurements. I think I'll round this over real quick and then go up and see how everything fits. Boy, that's feeling just smooth. That would be very difficult to cut anything. I mean, look at this. Nothing. Yeah, that looking good. And the beauty is it's only going to get smoother because when I glass this in, I'm going to layer a little bit more up in here as well. Make sure this fiber is 100% saturated. But it's going to be fine. That's perfect. Okay, let's butter it up. Went in nice and smooth. Now it's just a matter of putting a nice radius around this. help waterproof it, stabilize it, and make it look pretty. Wasn't so bad. Went in pretty smooth. Let's take a look at this. Okay, there it is. There's our patch and our new fitting. I'm liking it.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of Onboard Lifestyle. A huge thanks goes out to our amazing patrons, whose generous support drives the production of our videos. Join our crew if you can. With a tight schedule, the captain is keeping a good pace to finish the mast step just in time. Come back next week for the final touches before Basik gets her stick back. See you then!